Good afternoon and welcome to this webinar. My name is Leonore Dupont and I am a Senior Associate in the Commercial Disputes and Regulation team here at Shepherd and Wedderburn. As disputes lawyers, my team regularly supports and advises clients on how to negotiate and resolve conflict situations. We often take the lead in negotiating, and even when we do not, we are always heavily involved with developing negotiation strategies. Before I get started, I have a few housekeeping points. It can be used to post questions or give us feedback on any aspect of this webinar. I will aim to respond to all questions via email following the conclusion of the webinar. I can also be contacted by either phone or email should you wish to get in touch at a later date for more specific advice. My contact details will appear on the last slide. The world as we know it has changed since the onset of the global health crisis caused by COVID-19. And for better or worse, these changes are likely to be here to stay for some time. Most of us are trying to adapt rapidly to managing teams remotely, to working from home in less than ideal circumstances, and perhaps even to the rigors of having to self-isolate. As well as the numerous personal challenges, the economic and business challenges are mounting up. One of the hurdles you may now face is the negotiation of a new deal or the renegotiation of an existing one. You may even have to resolve a conflict arising from COVID-19. As video conferencing technology has improved in recent years, it has become an increasingly common way of undertaking negotiations, albeit important negotiations are usually undertaken face-to-face. However, with the restrictions that have been imposed globally as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, video conferencing may be the best available method for conducting negotiations for the next few weeks or months. Over the course of the next 15 minutes, I will set out some key factors to consider before you decide to conduct a negotiation over a video link and how to optimize your preparation for a successful outcome. While this webinar is aimed at negotiation and conflict scenarios, much of what we talk about will also be applicable to everyday interactions. Before you agree to conduct any important or sensitive negotiations via a video link, we recommend that you pause and consider the advantages and disadvantages of doing so as a video conference may not be the best tool for every scenario. Compared with written correspondence or telephone calls, video conferencing is a rich medium. You can pick up on verbal and non-verbal communication cues such as frowns, smiles, hand gestures, and changes in vocal tone. In this sense, it can be considered to be the next best thing to being able to negotiate with a counterpart face-to-face. Some video conferencing platforms also allow users to share documents, screens, and other information. The ability to use these types of presentational aids can be invaluable in avoiding miscommunication, but also, if used thoughtfully and skillfully, in improving your persuasiveness. In addition, the use of a video conferencing facility can potentially save your business time and money if, for example, it allows people who are spread out all over the world to come together for a critical business negotiation without having to give up valuable time traveling or incurring travel costs. However, possibly the biggest advantage of a video link at present is that with a large proportion of the world's population in some form of lockdown, combined with the restrictions on traveling and health risks of interacting with other people, face-to-face meetings are simply not possible. Like all of you, I hope that this advantage is short-lived. There are, however, some distinct limitations to using a video link that you should be aware of since they are not experienced when conducting a face-to-face negotiation. The first of these limitations is one that most of you are likely to be familiar with if you use apps such as WhatsApp or Skype. It is that your vision is limited to the head and shoulders, or sometimes the nose and ceiling, of your counterpart. You cannot see what is off-screen and are therefore unlikely to pick up on the full range of body language, such as nervous toe tapping or other fidgeting. Hand gestures may not be visible either unless the concentration has been made sufficiently to allow these to be visible, or unless they occur in the area of the face. Smaller gestures like a shoulder shrug may also be lost via a camera. Added to this, it may not always be possible to tell if your counterpart is fully focused and carefully considering your points, or whether they are distracted by something happening off-screen. More importantly, it is nearly impossible to maintain eye contact via a video link. It is very difficult to fix your gaze directly into the camera eye while trying to watch and pay attention to what your counterpart is doing and saying on screen so that you can respond appropriately. And since eye contact is frequently a subconscious measure of sincerity, this lack makes it much more difficult to build a rapport with your counterpart. The second limitation relates to the issue of privacy and security. While it is of course possible to secretly record any negotiation for an ulterior motive, using an internet-based video conferencing system makes it that much easier to do, either by a party to the negotiation process or some unknown third party who has hacked into the video conference. A classic example of this is Zoom, the video conferencing app which reputedly has had issues with security and privacy breaches since the COVID-19 crisis began, due to the huge surge in daily users. Since December 2019, Zoom has reportedly had an increase of 190 million daily users, and the app has moved from being used primarily for corporate purposes to a mainstream consumer product. Their problems resulted in Zoom's CEO recently issuing a public apology and commitment to increasing Zoom's security features. Another practical privacy issue is the inability to tell if anyone is listening in off-screen and providing advice to the negotiator. This person could be a trusted key advisor or the actual decision maker. Either way, it would be preferable to be aware of such a person's involvement in the negotiation process, and better yet, to witness their reactions firsthand. Ultimately, if security and/or privacy is a critical issue for your business, and your trust in your counterparts is low, then you may wish to consider alternative negotiation methods. A third limitation is that, unlike in a face-to-face negotiation, when negotiating via a video link, you will have a live image of your own face and reactions in front of you. For most people, this is very distracting, and the psychological impact of this heightened self-awareness is not well researched. However, the implications range from 1. Failing to pay enough attention to the reactions of your counterpart, 2. Coming across as stiff and unnatural, or 3. Being constantly reminded visually of stereotypical differences such as gender, race, or age. This may have a subconscious effect on your ability to build a connection with your counterpart during the negotiation. Luckily, there are ways to minimize the impact of heightened self-awareness on your ability to negotiate. First, you can minimize or hide your own video image from yourself, and second, you can work to dispel any visual stereotype influences by attempting to build an informal connection with your counterpart in advance of any negotiation. The final type of limitation is one which I expect most people are frustratingly familiar: technical difficulties. The problem is that even if you can fix a technical issue, whether it is internet access, frozen video feeds, sound problems, or even problems with screen sharing, it is extremely difficult to negotiate at your best when frustrated or annoyed. Your mental frame of mind is likely to come across in the negotiation no matter how many deep breaths you take. Alternatively, the negotiation could be derailed by your equally annoyed counterpart. The only solution is to minimize the risks of any technical issues occurring in advance of the negotiation, and if they crop up anyway, to weigh up the merits of taking a short break for each party to recalibrate, or to reschedule the negotiation for another day, if that is possible. Having evaluated all of the above, if you decide that a video link is the best and most suitable option for your negotiation, or the best available alternative in the circumstances, there are a couple of simple tricks that you can consider deploying. However, I would caution that, as with any negotiation, preparation is key. The starting point is to ensure that the basics are in place. This includes ironing out any potential technical issues by checking everything: internet connections if you're working from home, sound and video quality, how to share slide decks for other documentation, the accessibility of the conferencing facility, and that you have all the relevant dial-in codes, and so on. You should also consider practical issues such as the location you wish to use and the visible background. For example, try not to sit with your back to a window, as this throws off the lighting and can make your face hard to see. Basically, try to ensure as best you can that you have a calm, quiet, and professional environment to negotiate in. Despite our general expectation that most people will be sympathetic to the current difficulties of working at home, appearances still matter. Think about your appearance. Dressing as you would if you were attending the negotiation in person is likely to have the added benefit of helping you get into the correct frame of mind. Just avoid bold clothing patterns, since these can be quite distracting on screen. The substantive preparation will, broadly speaking, be similar to how you should approach any other negotiation. You first need to know what your gold star objective is, what outcomes you consider to be acceptable, and what you can and cannot concede during the negotiation. Basically, have a firm grasp on what you are after and what your yellow and red lines are. You should also do your homework on the other parties to the negotiation. Map out their backgrounds, priorities, and motivations as best you can, both on a personal and business level. For example, you might have a key decision maker who has a pet project internally within his or her own business, and playing on that may achieve certain concessions. Alternatively, a business may place a premium on full or partial control of a particular resource for internal or external political reasons rather than on price. Try to consider what your counterpart's perspective is likely to be and what is influencing or driving their behavior, and then assess where your leverage lies and what negotiating strategies are likely to be effective. In addition to doing your usual homework, carefully consider whether you need to pre-negotiate the process that will apply before the parties negotiate the substance of a deal or a dispute. This is something that is often overlooked, but can be quite important, particularly in the context of a video link negotiation, where a nasty surprise regarding the process of signing off on an agreement or tensions arising from parties speaking over each other could derail what might otherwise have been a successful outcome. For example, think about whether you wish to have an agenda. Who will speak first? Do you want to agree to allot time frames for each party to speak and set breaks? How many people will be dialing into the negotiation? Who are the lead negotiators and what is their authority to close a deal? Do the parties wish to present information, and what will the protocol for sharing screens be? How is any written agreement to be prepared and by whom? Are there any specific legal requirements that apply to the form of the final agreement? How and when do you plan to sign the final document given remote working? Is the company seal required, and where is it? What will be suitable for any particular negotiation will vary depending on the issues, objectives, and parties involved. Finally, think about how you can normalize a video link negotiation. It is likely that most parties attending will be familiar with using video conferencing facilities, but perhaps not with conducting a formal, or even an informal, negotiation through this medium. There are a number of different techniques that you can use to put your counterpart at ease, including each party being upfront about their expectations and desired outcomes. Another option is to consider whether you should adapt or follow any cultural pre-business rituals, whether that is a remote drink, a virtual exchange of business cards, or social chit-chat before getting down to business. Encouraging a few minutes of icebreaker chat before a negotiation kicks off can help you find common ground with your counterparts on a personal level. More relevant to a video negotiation is to consider whether you wish to encourage each attendee to give a quick virtual tour of their surroundings and ask each person to outline any potential unexpected interruptions or distracting background noises that might be experienced. For example, children playing loudly, babies crying, or a dog barking. This may be a particularly useful scene-setting tool in the COVID-19 lockdown. In terms of your own, consider having a child run with a trusted colleague who can provide you with feedback on your video feed, environment, lighting, and in particular, your personal habits and gestures. Body language is important in any negotiation. However, a screen can exaggerate habits that may have passed unnoticed at an in-person meeting. For example, face-touching gestures or pen clicking may come across as nervous or impatient. Instead, try to use body language that tends to communicate that you are attentively listening. For example, nodding your head periodically and smiling slightly. You should also be aware of your positioning in the screen and posture. Try to ensure that your camera is eye level and that you are not looking down into it, which is usually the case with a laptop placed on a table. Once you are aware of your own personal gestures and body language, you could consider minimizing your own video image during the negotiation so that you reduce the impact of heightened self-awareness. Where appropriate, you could also consider preparing and asking open-ended questions to start off with, and try to note each counterpart's facial expressions and gestures so that you can learn how to interpret their respective communication styles as the negotiation progresses. Finally, while video link negotiations may be here to stay for the future, at present it is likely that most parties will not have a significant amount of experience in conducting negotiations in this manner. particularly not from their own homes as opposed to a boardroom. So try to stay flexible and understanding in response to any unexpected changes and interruptions. Thank you for listening to this short guide on how to successfully navigate a video link negotiation. If you would like to find out more about general negotiating skills, please check out our earlier webinar series on the psychology of negotiation, which can be found at the details shown on screen.